So, hi Romano. Nice to see you again.
Hello, Michelle. Yeah, it's really great to see you again.
Yeah. So we had a long discussion and on VR, and today I invited Christoph to be
Hi,
part of our
Christoph.
discussion
Thank you,
because
gentlemen.
as you remember, in fact, Christoph, we talked a lot about how you can use VR and how businesses could use it, and Romano came also up with a lot of questions and his own impressions of what you could do.
Mm.
We
Yeah,
wanted to talk about how the future looks like, correct, Romano?
exactly. We get really a great response on the video on LinkedIn. That was really amazing, and I also got quite a lot of questions from different people how this VR is really working and where this VR is going in the future, and is this sort of the new normal where we are going. And I think this is something we definitely need to discuss today in this talk.
Yeah. No, in fact, even the lots of visitors coming in, they ask, well, is this the right moment? Isn't this too big for us? Or is this technology too far away? We know it's the right timing, but Christoph, what do you think? Is it the right moment? And where is it heading?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think we're definitely seeing an incredible amount of adoption in the enterprise and in business for virtual reality. And this has not been the case, I would say, a year and a half or even a year ago. This level of engagement we're seeing from users and the adoption rate. I think we've hit really an inflection point with this technology in the last 6 months.
Okay.
And it's certainly a great time to inform yourself about what is possible.
Yeah.
Where it's still early enough that there's still a long way to go and a lot of new opportunities to look into, both as an organization or as a provider or expert in the field.
Yeah.
But I think what we're seeing is that it's at the same time what we are noticing in this technology working with clients, that it matured from a prototype to real product in the last 6 months. And this is really a different world we're seeing now.
Yeah, how is the speed? I mean, we met nearly 4 years ago and we had the project together. And I do remember, in fact, we still had cables, we had a computer, we had sensors in the room. We needed about a space of 3 by 3 meters to do the work. Seeing what we have here today is completely different. How do you see the pace of VR development going on?
Yeah, it's difficult to compare the old way how VR meetings were. And it felt a little bit like you were always setting up a home gym every time you wanted to jump into VR. And it's just so much easier now. There's so much less friction involved in the process. And this actually allows the things that work to work at scale in an enterprise, in different processes, in different departments. And I think this is one of the exciting parts we've seen, the emergence of hardware that is user-friendly and available at scale, use cases that are replicable, and the entire software ecosystem maturing. So within the last 4 years, there has been an incredible amount of change. I would argue that the last 12 months were really pivotal for VR. And there's a lot more coming.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of innovation left.
Yeah, I think, Romano, the question that business has is, in fact, how can I use it? Do I need to use it, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So many of the people are asking, of course, the question, what are really the use cases I can do with that? And what is the business case of exactly doing this? For example, why should I do all the educations in here rather than with Zoom? And what are also the implications with that? Or what are the benefits and also the advantages of doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think as with every new technology, you always have, it's the second or third generation of, modern virtual reality, if you want to call it this way, that we're seeing right now. And it's it's developing very rapidly, which means there are still some downsides. We talk about user-friendly hardware, but it's still a device I have to put on my head. It's still a device I have to manage, set up, and a lot of the solutions, while a lot of things happened in the last 12 months, there's also plenty of things that it doesn't support perfectly yet. So what we have to look at is what are these early use cases that actually provide real business value right now, because that in 5 to 10 years, we could transition entirely to spatial computing as a platform. I think there's a lot of thesis around that and a lot of exciting things in the work, but where is it right now? And the exciting thing is that we see a particular set of use cases where virtual reality is right now providing not a gimmick, not an entertainment device or a wow factor to get us out of boring Zoom calls for once, or boring video conferences for once. We're actually seeing true value being generated by this tool. And one of the examples, I think, is if you wanted to conduct a real workshop with a team in virtual reality. If you have 20 people and you actually want to make a decision, think about how this looks in a video conference where you have one person speaking at a time, you have one piece of information being shared at a time. It doesn't really have this level of collaboration and this aspect of dynamism that you want to have in a team. And if you make the move into VR, the ROI you can receive on using this technology with the aforementioned downsides that you actually need to have a device and need to equip people with this device, the payback time is incredibly fast, because what you can replicate in this space, especially for more complex meetings, especially for meetings where we really want to discuss a lot of data or make a complex decision or have the need that we split up into groups right on a whiteboard and have this parallel work, this very natural way of working and coming to a decision that is purely agile and very immersive and very focused. This is something where VR really shines right now.
And I think, Romano, you were also saying it's also for networking.
Exactly. And it's absolutely great. I'm sitting here at the table, having here my coffee cup, and it feels actually like I'm really sitting at the table with you guys and just having a discussion, but also knowing that you guys are miles away from me, but it really feels personal, as if I'm really talking with you at this table in this place. And I think this is a whole new level of interrelationship between the people, which enables us to do other things, and that's really great.
You're exactly on the right track here, Romano, because this is the foundation of VR. It's not that we have now a better camera for a video call or a better microphone where you hear me better. It's in itself a completely different way how it feels to be together here. And arguably, this is a very simple VR meeting we're having right now. And already this feels a lot more intimate. It feels like we're connecting on a much deeper level. And it would be easy for us to break out and start working more intensively and more more focused on some other topics. And this is really one of these benefits that we're seeing in VR. This sense of belonging, this immersion, this presence that you feel builds the foundation, and then we can have a lot of benefits stacking up on top of this foundation that Romano you mentioned, this feeling of presence that we have.
And that's perhaps another thing. We have been discussing that the last meeting with Romano. Space is getting a different value. Now, until now, we have big companies with lots of numbers of square meters. Now, especially in the last months, they could not use it, so it was just empty space. And this space here is replicable as much as you want, but with a different cost. Correct?
Yeah. Absolutely, and this is one of the factors that we also see. Space in bigger cities is getting more and more expensive, and even if you want to have real good meeting rooms with a lot of space where you have also the whiteboards and perhaps also some big screen TVs in there, it costs quite a lot of our money, and with that you just get tons of space that you can need, and also you have different possibilities of drawing, of moving objects around, and that's really cool in here.
Yeah. Now, from this point, now I mean, business is going to have demands on what it needs. Yeah, so we want to be interactive, we want to exchange and collaborate. What I think are going to be the implications on the industry coming from business?
Well, that's a broad question. I think if you look at the needs of an enterprise or a business in virtual reality, I don't think anybody wants a glorified video conference.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about providing a VR solution where you can share a screen and then we can all look at the screen and basically do what we do on our laptops normally, just in VR. This is not good enough. This will not create the value for an organization to actually go through this change management process to adopt this technology and use it at a certain scale. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's about two elements. It's compatibility with the existing work ecosystem. That is one part. You cannot create VR as an island of productivity where you neither get any data in or out. You won't be successful with this. It needs to be fluently integrated with your normal work, and there needs to be a way that is not 0, 1, not binary. There needs to be a smooth transition where it can move more and more work streams as needed towards VR and adopt it. And I think solutions therefore need to be built with a lot of foresight, how even the concept of space is being used. We sometimes talk about cognitive bandwidth here in VR, which just covers the idea of how much information can we handle in a VR meeting compared to even me working individually on my laptop or my workstation at home. And instead of cramming a lot of this data on small screens, you can spread it out. Yeah. You can use it in a much more consumable format. We can just turn our heads and see a presentation here, turn our heads to the right, see a whiteboard there. And I think the approach that businesses want solutions that understand the benefits of VR and can utilize these advantages, these fundamental advantages VR give us. But the challenge is to find a way between connecting, having a certain level of synergy with the existing way of doing business without compromising what we do in VR. So we want to be able to work seamlessly with the data we are used to be working, at least at the very beginning. But we don't want this data to cause the VR experience to be limited. And I think this is the challenge. And this is a very product centric question to VR. Like how do I work in here? Do I work with whiteboards, which are concepts from the physical world we bring in? Do I work with post-it notes? Do I work with screen sharing? Do I dial into meetings? How does this look? So it's a lot of questions that you need to get right, even just to reach one usable use case in an organization.
Where do you think then is this then moving? Is, let's say, VR going to be normal? I mean, the new normal? We are going to meet in, well, we wake up in the morning and go, instead of going to the office, put up our glasses. Will not be like they are today. I presume we're going to have quite a fast development there. Where do you see us moving the next, let's say, years?
I think work is changing, and the global pandemic has, is credited to have initiated a lot of digital adoption. I think a lot of companies rather realized how dependent they still are on geography, on physical brick and mortar offices for their productivity. There's been a great study from BCG that has said that while individual productivity wasn't so affected from home offices, collaboration was greatly affected. The majority of people, the super majority of people, say that their collaboration levels decreased.
Yeah.
And this means, I think for me, it's rather a world where there's a very dystopian world to saying we're submitting ourselves to the matrix. Where everything becomes very inhuman. I don't think this is so. I think this is very personal what we have, and I don't think the goal of VR is to replace all sorts of human actual interaction. I see VR much more as a tool for us to reduce our geographic dependency. I think in 20 years we'll look back and see the current times and even the years before as barbaric, if you ask me. That people had to move to small cities because they had to pick between family and jobs, and so many people that were forced to change their lives because of their careers. And I think this is not going to be the future. I think employers will be able to work with anyone they want, no matter where they are in the world, and it's going to become a lot more equal.
Yeah. I think, Romano, that was also a point, this collaboration. I mean, you can feel it in your company and with your clients. That collaboration has gone dramatically down, and that's why you said we need more places to connect, exchange. How do you see that then in future?
Exactly. I also see that during this pandemic, what I really miss is having the physical contact with my friends, with the family, and also with my colleagues. What I really miss is just having a coffee at the coffee machine with my colleagues, just having a chat with them. Everything is quite focused on meetings that we need to organize. There are no informal meetings anymore, or just a chat somewhere, and that's a little bit the downside that I see. But what I can clearly see when I look at VR, there is quite a possibility that you have a space somewhere where you can meet the people and where you can talk to them. And I was also yesterday at a meetup in VR, and it was really cool that you just can walk to the people, to a table, and just have a chat with them. And the interesting thing is, when you have a chat with them, suddenly you think you know these people, you can hear them, you sort of can feel them, and this is a real cool thing. And in my opinion, this is the future where we are going. Of course, we also had that discussion before. You will not be 8 hours in VR. You will be in VR for special meetings that you'll have. And of course, there are other meetings where you just use the other tools that we have for meetings, because these are the tools for one type of meetings, and VR is the tool for another type of meetings.
Yeah, that is what we wrote in a blog about the employer of the future. We call him, will be an SLH. So he will have a smartphone, a laptop, and then a VR headset, depending on what he needs or she needs to communicate, choosing the right option. But now VR is definitely more than just, let's say, a luxury option or just something, well, it's nice and fancy, but it's really more productive and engaging. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what could be, let's say, the fear of a business to get in touch with VR? What do you think, Romano? Why don't we see yet everyone coming in and asking? Where do you see some hurdles at the moment?
At the moment, I see one of the hurdles is of course you need to have that device. I think that's at the moment the biggest hurdle that I can see also when I discuss with my friends. So what I could imagine is when we have also software which works on the normal PCs where you can simulate sort of the VR, I think the adoption will increase, of course. And what I also see quite clearly is we don't know yet what kind of meetings we want to have in VR and which meetings we should have outside of VR with the other tools. And I think we need to have sort of an answer, of course, by making some experiments with that to find out what works best in VR and what does not work in VR. And I think this is something we really need to find out.
Yeah, but this I think is definitely then tasks for people like Christoph or us to support, in fact, companies to get in touch with VR, how to use it. Because I think, Christoph, what is also correct, you cannot just take real life into virtual one-to-one. So there needs a certain interpretation, a certain way of how do you get a certain emotion in it. And it is about emotions. VR is a lot about psychology, so you need to know what effect does a place like this have, sitting here practically on top of a mountain and looking downside to the lake. How does it affect the way of how we work, how we interact? Do we need a small room, a big room? Am I correct, Christoph?
Yeah, it's. I think the entirety of businesses is learning how to use this technology. And this is just a process.
Yeah.
It's the essence of an emerging technology that, not everybody is perfectly informed about what works, what doesn't work. And there is always, historically, probably this looked very sci-fi and very, very far away.
Yes.
And most people that we meet in VR are actually surprised how easy it is at the end to get started with, how little friction there is to have a first workshop in virtual reality just to try it out and see, does this use case work? Not every use case works perfectly in every organization the same way it does in another one. And I think this is what I really think is great in the current climate of businesses searching for ways to connect more globally and reinvent the way they're working. I think it's great to see the openness to new ideas. And this is something that was not always given and is, I think, changing.
Yeah, no, I can confirm that. In fact, most of our clients, sometimes we have guests coming in, they want to know how it is, that when they come in, they are a person having a certain view on VR. When they go out, it's completely changed. It's 180 degrees change, seeing VR from a different perspective. And as you said, it's very, very easy. Yeah?
That might be the biggest hurdle, that even on a video like this, you can't. You actually have to see what you can do.
You have to see it.
And you have to experience it, and that's probably the thing that if you didn't need the device, you couldn't be in this medium. So it's a little bit, you can't really navigate around it. It's certainly the thing that would stop incredibly fast adoption. If everybody would know how it works immediately, and you didn't have to put them in a headset. What I find interesting is, we're looking at data on our end, and Romano, to your point, it's interesting to see we're now defining these activation moments in clients we work with, where we say, it sticks at this point. There's a point at which this is no longer exploration, but implementation of the technology. And I think this changed a lot in the last 12 months. The activation moment is a lot clearer. It's a lot faster, and the conversion rate, if you want to call it, of people who, after this first, in our case, it's very often either a social event you actually hold as a first larger team meeting or a workshop or a strategic presentation. It's one of these types of meetings that you organize once in VR with your team. And the conversion rate of how many people then actually say, hey, I would like to do this in a different setting in my team, it's incredibly high. So it's about getting people comfortable with taking this first step, having great advisors that can take them and explain to them the industry and the solutions and the downsides and the upsides. And it's a lot about people to experience it. I think those are the elements that why many people might see this further away than it actually is.
Yeah, that's also my impression that I have. I also have a lot of colleagues, and I show them my video and also explain them what we are doing. And we are now also trying this out at our company. And we also plan now a sort of a team event in VR, which is absolutely great. And more and more people of my colleagues are buying these glasses because they see really the benefit in it to use them, and I think this is really great. But my question to you is also, when we look in the future, for me it looks like we are at the tipping point of this technology, and now really the whole thing starts to move. In my opinion, I think in 6 months or within a year, we will see quite a lot of meetings or of things coming up in VR. What is your opinion on that?
We're in the first row together, with Michaela and the team. I think for us, this point is already happening. So we see exponential growth. It's just the thing with exponential growth is that at the very beginning, it looks like a flat curve, even though it's growing very, very quickly, just because, the entire market of work is so huge. But I completely agree with you, Romano, that there's a transition happening towards adopting this at larger scale, maybe not rolling it out entirely so everybody immediately has a headset, but, having about 100 headsets in your organization to support critical events and team meetings internally in different teams, that's a good starting setup that we're seeing happening across many, many industries and organizations, also different sizes of organizations happening. So for us, it's really, it has been for now a couple months accelerating how the industry has adopted this.
Yeah, cool. I think it's a good view on what is coming up. Say, to close down, Romano, what would be your closing sentence, and perhaps also invitation to who is listening and watching regarding VR?
My recommendation to all of the people who are watching is just try it out, because it's really great, and it's also a great opportunity, especially now in this pandemic, which will take some time, unfortunately. But I think now it's the right time to try that out and have some meetings or even a coffee with some people in a virtual reality. This is absolutely great. Try to start experimenting and try to experiment in new ways of working, because in my opinion, this can really be the enabler of new cool stuff which is going on. And I think right now this train of VR is just starting to roll, and in my opinion, don't miss this opportunity and don't be late for that train.
Christoph, what would you say?
I would just sign whatever Romano just said. I think this is a perfect summary.
Perfect.
There's a tipping point, there's an inflection point the industry hit, and if you as an organization don't have virtual reality or spatial concepts of working together on your map right now, I think it's arguably certainly time to look into this and to start talking to vendors and solution providers and inform yourself, because a lot of companies are adopting this not as a gimmick, as a critical tool that enables them to work faster, make decisions quicker, in a more informed way, and quite frankly, just have more flexibility with how teams can be structured globally.
Yeah, I would also like so to close it. In fact, smart working for the future is VR. So be brave and do the step. I think if you're, as you say, in the first wave, you will make, let's say, a nice tour. If you're just waiting for the wave to move along, it will be difficult to follow. Guys, it was very nice to have you here, and hope to see you again in our places, and looking forward to a VR future coming up. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you,
also.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Michaela.
Thank you.